scarring one of his grandchildren's lives by not publicly embracing her. So apparently his son had a baby with a woman. They've fought about it, and he pays for the baby, but he has not embraced the child. So Maureen Dowd is saying it's bad for the child that the president has not acknowledged her. So I kind of think, well, she should be kvetching at the son, whose baby it is. It's not the president's baby. So I don't know what you think, but I'm throwing it out there.
I agree with you completely. It shouldn't have been directed to Joe Biden. It should be directed to Hunter Biden. It's 5 children, not 4, Hunter, because this is not Joe Biden's baby, and I think it's very hard for Joe Biden to be a grandfather to the child if his son is not being a father. He can talk to his child, he can advise Hunter, but look, what is absolutely evident to me is that the right wing and the MAGA world has decided to weaponize Hunter Biden against his dad.
Yeah.
And everything and anything Hunter does or does not do is going to be weaponized.
And this is Maureen Dowd at the New York Times.
Yeah, she's a very serious person.
So I think that is such bull crap, this idea that, well, it's really all Hunter Biden. No, even if Hunter is a deadbeat dad, Biden could still invite his granddaughter to the White House saying, you're part of my family. We want to get to know you. We support you. You're part of this family. I dedicate this book to my 7 grandchildren. I don't care. If I have a son one day and they're a deadbeat dad to a child, that's still my grandchild. I wouldn't cut them out because my son's a deadbeat. I would never even fathom such a thing. I would go around my son and meanwhile be telling my son, get your crap together. You have a child, be a man, start being a real father, stop being a loser. This attempt to pin blame on Hunter Biden or to say it's just Republicans pouncing or trying to smear Biden. No, it's Biden choosing for himself an objectively immoral path in his family. And they're just trying to what about it by pointing at Hunter or shifting the blame. And I'm like, why? Why defend this? Why defend the indefensible? You don't have to. You really don't have to.
Well, I think the thing we have to grapple with here actually traces back a little bit further, and that is that Hunter Biden largely turned out like he has because of his parenting. I don't like to fully blame parents or children for one or the other. I think people they have autonomy. Of course, you have some parents who do everything right and the kid still turns out to be a loser, but it's not as common. I think that Hunter seems like somebody who has never been held responsible, who has never been checked, who has never been actually disciplined. It seems like he's gotten away with everything but murder throughout his life. His dad continues to cover for him. And I think that that is the problem. That's why he's turned out this way. That's why you now have him being a deadbeat dad. I don't think that comes from nowhere, right? And in my family, like if you had a kid, yeah, that's exactly how my parents would be behaving. They would be acknowledging it. They would be trying to take care of it. And they would be holding your feet to the fire if you were trying to skirt those responsibilities. And I think that that is a huge problem in our society when you see people who have these kids that they spoil their whole lives and they turn out to be terrible parents. And you're thinking like, how did this end up this way? But it is a generational curse, right? It is a cycle that you see repeated throughout families. When you've got somebody who's just completely wilding out, usually it's because their parents were hot messes too. And unfortunately, it often means their kids are going to be hot messes because nobody's coming in to actually right the ship and to actually require that they shape up and get their acts together. So I hate it for everybody involved, but I don't think that Joe Biden gets a pass on this whatsoever. And I think that he should be asked a lot more about Hunter by the media in general than he is. If one of Trump's children were acting this way, can you imagine?
They did. They obsessed over all the various misdeeds of Trump's kids when he was in office.
Were actually pretty straight-laced kids. They turned out pretty decent as a whole. Like, none of them were out there wilding out doing crazy stuff. Ivanka's successful. Tiffany's going to law school. Jared's in there running foreign policy, which I don't know if that was a
There's some shady like corruption things with their kids, like financially.
Sure.
But
they were on the, as a whole, you know, like they seem to be somewhat on the straight and narrow, have their own families, be doing the right things. And yet they got tons of scrutiny and you never see that same energy directed back. And you certainly never see Joe Biden required to answer for it. It's always this thing of like, that's his kid. That's not his fault. No, it is his fault. Like you raise a kid like this, you should have to answer for it. And he's a menace to society.
Yeah, I want to shout out my friend Alyssa Farah Griffin, the one host of The View who is center right. She did call out how terrible this is. And like you said, how this kid is going to grow up and know that they were rejected by the most powerful person in America. Take a listen to what she had to say.
I'll preface this. It makes me uncomfortable even to talk about, and you guys know I have a sister who's a recovering addict. I couldn't have more sympathy for the struggles that come with that. I also have estrangement in my family. I can't have a birthday pass or a holiday that I don't think of the phone call I'm not receiving that day.
Because you're estranged from your dad.
I'm estranged from my father, and I can't pretend to know what's going on with the child, but I know that someday she will be old enough to read and hear the speeches where he says, my 6 grandchildren, and just leaves out that there's the 7th. If he could even just change that language to me, that would be enough, because I don't know what's going on behind closed doors, but she will someday be old enough to know that he was choosing to reject her and not acknowledge her as his child.
So it's just crazy to me that only like the one conservative on the panel or whatever can even point out the basic fact that he's going to be hurting this child profoundly by rejecting her so publicly.
Yeah, it's a pretty tribal mentality to me, but I think on an even deeper level, the amount that people don't understand how these things affect kids, it's really quite shocking for where we're at in the age of information. We've learned a lot, but from adoption trauma to not having both parents present to having a parent that's neglectful, these are wounds that people carry throughout their lives. And yes, people can be resilient, and yes, people can find ways to move forward. But I think Alyssa's right when she says this is like a ever constant void in your life, that even when you're an adult and you're choosing the estrangement, it's still something that is a very deep wound that you were always thinking of and lacking and missing in your life. And I think it's very just crass and cruel to put a kid through this and to not think through some of these choices and how they will ultimately impact her. So I think it's really irresponsible, I guess, at the end of the day. It's very reckless with a human life.